WTF, we're doing a podcast. I'm Niki.
And I'm Michelle. This is 50. Welcome to What the 50. Join us on our continued journey to simplify our lives.
We will seek the answers from the experts and offer tips, tools, and techniques to live your life with confidence and joy. Are we ready?
Let's go.
Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Nikki.
So today we have a guest from Paris.
Oh my gosh, bonjour.
So this is Nina.
Hi, Nina.
So Nina is actually was in my coaching cohort, and we have quickly become friends, quickly become colleagues, and doing work together. I love Nina's perspective on so many things because, one of our missions, Nina, for the podcast is to stay relevant. Yeah. And Nina is definitely one of those people, Michelle, that keeps me relevant. Right. I'll say something and Nina's like, well, think about it this way.
Another perspective.
Similar to how our children give us that. Right. Nina's like another one of my children. But she is a leadership coach. And her background is in psychology, organizational psychology. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nina.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So she has her master's in organization psychology. She did her high schooling in Paris, in France, and then she did her undergraduate in the UK and your graduate degree in the UK. Yeah. But she's also had much experience in the United States because she did summers in the United States. So here she is.
Welcome.
Thank you for that fabulous introduction.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk to in this February time, Nina, was relationship and what had come across almost as it was your words, I believe, a dating crisis, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny because I was mentioning to my son, Kalen, last night, in fact, that, we were having a conversation about the dating crisis. And Nina, his comment was, dating crisis? There's no dating crisis, Mom. I think those are harsh words. I think dating has evolved. And whenever there's change, sometimes people find it hard to accept the changes. I think, I'm not so sure about that, but that's his 18-year-old perspective. Now, Nina's in her 20s, and obviously she's engaged, and so she has a slightly different perspective. So it's interesting to...
certainly changes in the dating scene.
Kalen, in his conversation, was telling me that because women don't tend to need men as much.
Yes.
Because they're no longer relying on men to be the breadwinner. Women are being able to thrive and survive on their own. This is when he feels people like Andrew Tate are able to come in and infiltrate into men and into young boys and, talk about that hyper masculinity. But again, I think that's a whole other conversation on Andrew Tate, for sure.
But I think I think what is also happening is, and we had this conversation, we actually had an episode on this about the increase in feminine energy versus masculine energy. And I think what is happening is that we're now seeing an increase in the masculine energy in women. Various reasons, but again, as you had said, we tend to focus on what's happening in the West because that may not necessarily be so on the other side of the world.
Absolutely.
It would actually be interesting to compare to see the percentage, but I've read where in the United States, for sure, there has been a decrease in divorces. Why is that? Because there has been also been a decrease in marriages. So the question is, and we're talking about relationships, but are persons no longer wanting to become married, to get married? Is it that marriage is no longer a goal? Because for us, it was, go to school, develop a relationship with a suitable partner. And the goal was to get married.
Right. What do you think, Nina?
Is that no longer a goal? Is it? I mean, we know there are lots of changes.
I think when I kind of hear, Gen Z or millennials, I think millennials still, for the most part, want to get married. But when you kind of listen to Gen Z, it seems like, for them, it's like a outdated institution, and that, like, I don't know, they seem to, it's interesting because it's not something they have experienced maybe themselves, obviously, but they have very negative kind of, views towards it seems. So, I think it's just a society phenomenon as a whole, because people, they're no longer like, when the more a society becomes individualist, and like, it's always about, chase your desires. Like, if someone is kind of getting in the way of that or making things difficult, just get rid of them. So, it's really like the dating advice that we often hear, is just like, oh, like, he, like, you had a bump on the road, just like leave him, just ditch him, so it's always that. I think, like, it's just this society in general is
Becoming
kind of
more
really pushing,
self-centered, right?
yeah, very much self-centered, and very much pushing kind of that individualist, it's, social media especially, you could see, is really pushing that, because it's all about, go get that bag, focus on your career, and that kind of goes for both, men and women, because it's all about kind of displaying the perfect lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And so, like, people are focusing more on that rather than, important values, and, some things that are more deep, and so like and because of the sexual revolution as well, like, women tend to, like, emulate, like, I guess, like, that's also a whole other topic and debate, but I think there has been, at least from my perspective, and that's what some expert also saying on the topic, that there kind of has been a brainwashing of women at large, to make them believe and to make them feel like the only way to feel empowered is by emulating behavior, like manly behavior.
Yes, definitely. We had this big discussion today about that, because what does, like, if a woman shows emotion, or they're automatically seen as weak, because it's in the whole career power struggle. Right.
Yeah, and even like on a biological like standpoint, when women engage in sexual relations, like, we will, like, release oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And so, like, it's very different for men don't, like, they don't actually release that. They will tend to release that during the cuddling or the spending quality time part. So, like, women are not biologically designed to act to be fit to act that way, but I guess, like, no, women are doing it. They're like, I can sleep around too and not have feelings and not be attached, and they feel like that's where their empowerment comes from. So because of that, they tend to kind of not be interested in any long-term relationship until they get in their 30s or late 30s, and then they realize, like, it's not as easy to kind of get in the market, to find somebody when you've been just you do carry, like, studies show that it's great, like, sexual revolution is great. It has its ups, but it also has a lot of downs, because studies also show that people that do engage in a lot of casual sex will tend to have a lot of emotional, like, baggage, like, it does affect you like psychologically and emotionally. So at 30 you won't be the same kind of person as you were like when you were younger, because it'll be much harder for you to engage and stay in a relationship without, like without unpacking all of that, without, having to project that on your partner. So
And so they can remain detached.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you think the rise of online dating, because that's something that we have no
idea
about.
We know about it, but I mean, how does it, especially now, how does that work? I mean,
and how does it affect
and how
dating?
Generally,
dating, right? Yes.
Again, it comes back to, I think, just being detached.
Yeah, I think just like I was mentioning the other day to Nicola, is that it's creating this illusion of infinite choices, because like when you look back, and I think someone was mentioning this, and I thought this was a really brilliant example, is that back in the days when you were really interested, when you saw a beautiful woman, when a man saw a beautiful woman, he felt like it was very like rare, and like something that he has to kind of jump on the opportunity to court her, to to get her phone number, to make sure that they stay in touch, that he gets some kind of contact information. And so like
information, yes.
and so like with social media nowadays, and online dating apps, it's giving you the illusion that you have access to those beautiful people that are filtered and all looking the same, like constantly at your fingertip.
And you
So
can
you
just swipe.
exactly, you can just swipe, so you don't feel like you need to put in much effort. If like it doesn't work out with this person, there's always someone else that you can swipe on, and
Swipe away.
and the grass always seems greener, so I think like that's like for people that don't really reflect much, and are kind of just jumping in on the wagon, and are just kind of going about their going about their day, I guess. They're not very much aware of like how this can like subconsciously affect them. So,
and I think there's no, sorry, Michelle, there's no courting.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like it's interesting as well, like that's another point that has been kind of raised by certain psychologists, is that like because women have because of the sexual revolution, women have kind of dropped down their standards. Like before, women are the gatekeepers of sex, so when before, like in order for a man to get with you, he'd need to take you to dinner, maybe, depending on the cultures and the time, speak to your parents, like at the time,
flowers.
Yeah, exactly.
There's courting, that just doesn't happen anymore.
It was a long process, like, and men will do like whatever standard is set by women, men will actually follow through. And so when you see that most women are now like, like have really lowered their standards because they're like, well, we can also do it. We can also get sex whenever. Like it has kind of trained men into just thinking like they can just do the bare minimum and get sex. So why would they try? Why would they do anything?
And then I think, is it fair to say that if a woman sets kind of higher standards, they're labeled in our society as high maintenance?
I wouldn't say that's high maintenance at all. I mean, that's just having high standards.
High maintenance?
No. I'm saying keeping your standards at a particular level.
Right.
I would not equate that with being a high maintenance woman.
Okay.
That's just a woman with high standards.
So what's high maintenance? High maintenance
is being, you're very expensive. You have to dress a particular way and designer clothes. That's high maintenance.
Okay.
But back to the courting though, I'd actually watched a video recently, and I just shared that with Niki, where the lady said, based on her past relationships, she's not getting into another one until the man courts her. And she was pretty young. But she said that she wants to be courted. And I mean, the person that was interviewing her was saying, well, that may not necessarily happen,
And there were men interviewing her.
Men interviewing her, right.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's unfortunate. And listening to you now, there really does seem to be a crisis.
Yes, a courting crisis.
There seems to be some sort of dating crisis, some sort of crisis. I mean, to me, it's more than just a change.
Right.
I mean, if we're going to be lowering our standards,
Right.
and another person may argue and say it's not necessarily lowering the standards, just changing the standards. But I guess we can only speak from our perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's again, standards are very individual. So, I think it's just it does obviously when you have a large group of people like lowering the standards and actually like, when the other gender being men having to do the bare minimum to get women, like it kind of teaches them, it reinforces the fact that they can just do the very bare minimum as well. Like even when they meet a woman of high value, that have standards, it's they experiencing a little bit of a gap. It's like, oh, like I'm used to doing like the bare minimum and I can get with her. But equally, like, the more, as I said, use whatever high standards you have as your way to stand out, because the right people will find you and the right person will, do the work, so it's really about kind of not falling to the pressure of how the society currently is, and just keeping your standards strong. And even if it feels like nothing is happening, as long as you're taking action and you're doing the right things and you're exposing yourself, you're being visible, you're going out there,
lower your standards.
And I think, that's an important point for women of all ages. Like for our peer group, in our age group, we hear women talking about that a lot, that it's so difficult to find men and of good quality, because of course men our age too are going younger.
Yeah.
Right? So
absolutely.
But the point is critical that you made, that don't lower your standards. The right person will be there. And I'm sure if you're networking within your tribe, within persons who are, similar values, you will find that person.
And as coaches, Nina and I always know it starts with working within yourself.
Absolutely. Right? Knowing who you are.
So Nina, perhaps you could tell us your 3 ways that you think that we can overcome, and women can find, and men can really find people that are aligned with their values, with themselves. Like what steps should we take as women to overcome these crises in finding partners?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, to really kind of deeply get to know yourself, know your values, establish what, maybe just take a paper, write down what are your values, what are your non-negotiable, what are your deal breakers, what's okay for you, what's not okay. And then kind of, I love this, and actually I saw this on Oprah talking about this, and I did this myself, but like really write a detailed list of what you want out of your partner, obviously, again, a little point going back to the previous point about standards is that, it's great to have high standards, but equally, you hear a lot of young women saying, I won't settle for anyone that's not making 6 figures, that's like, 6'2", 6'3", and so like, again, like standards really come with like the things that matters the most, so it's like, I think there is that disillusion as well. There's a lot of women that are just, you hear that often. They're like, oh no, like I won't be with anyone like that's that. But when you look at kind of the population, they're very, those men represent 1 or 2% of the population.
But to a point to that, Nina, is that as women, we are also here to build them to those 6 figures, right, Mich?
Exactly. That's what's different.
To support them and to
in
build
a true partnership, of course.
A true partnership, right?
Exactly. So. And I think that's what's really different between those different like between those generations. And I think like, I think the previous generation really valued building a partnership
us.
and
Right.
empower
Yes.
together, you know. And so nowadays it's more like I want you to do the work already, and I just want to kind of join in when, you know, life is good. You know, I don't want to
Right.
go through the struggle. I don't want to, you know, I mean, equally, there's the whole other side of, you know, the spectrum, which is the other extreme where it's like, oh, you know, I keep seeing this potential in this guy, but he's not, you know, he's just a mess. And, you know,
Of
Yes,
course.
and you have to know the
we're not,
Come
difference.
across lots
Yeah,
of
you have
those.
to know the
yeah,
difference.
we're not pushing for that, but there is kind of a middle, you know, where it's like, you know, and I think that's the thing that's missing. I think a lot of women don't really, the women of this young generation don't seem to be concerned or interested at all in building something long term, and you know, and they just want it all ready and, you know, ready to go and just
Instant
don't.
gratification, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's the society we live in. So yeah, that
Mhm.
definitely, it's
Yeah.
instant gratification at all levels. But yeah, so really get to know yourself. And so I was mentioning Oprah, just write down a list of everything you want, you know, everything you want in your partner, the values, who they are, how they behave, you know, like think about the kind of relationship you want to have, you know, like, you know, do you want to feel connected intellectually, spiritually? What are the different
Feelings.
things? What are the different things? Like really try to be as detailed as possible and write it down and, you know, make that clear for you, because the more you have it clear, the more you can, like, the easier it's going to be for you to identify when
Mhm.
you're dating, when you're coming across people. You can just see it. Okay, you know, they're like, they're okay, but you know, that's whatever is a deal breaker for me. So, you know, instead of just going with the feeling, with the flow, just, I think like that's when people waste a lot of time, is because they have no framework as to, you know, how, you know, what they want and
It's
how
almost
they
like
should.
creating a vision for who you want.
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
So
And
absolutely.
be
just
the
being clear about it. Yeah.
so this is Nina's sphere of coaching, but lead in with what you want. So be the leader for yourself, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the second one would be, you know, use those values and use whatever you feel like, you know, isn't mainstream, you know, and as a way to stand out. So, you know, like if you're trying the online dating route, if most people are not writing much on their bio, make sure to, you know, make it very specific and kind of talk about your values and talk about things that are, you know, a little bit more meaningful than what most people do. So, you know, use that as, you know, as a way to kind of stand out, because it will filter out, you know, the wrong people. So do that. And whatever passion, whatever interest that you have, make sure to be in those places, like network, go to, you know, if you're passionate about cooking or gardening or whatever activity, just make sure to sign up to go to networking events or like workshops that are about that. For instance, for me, I kind of realized this, and I knew that, you know, for me, the values that I really wanted was someone that, you know, that really kind of, you know, has that is very caring and, you know, kind and, like, you know, on a very deep level. So I just knew that I was always interested in humanitarian work, any kind of volunteering work. So I was like, I think like that's where I need to be to meet similar, like, you know, similar minded people. And actually that's what ended up happening, because I went volunteering across the globe, you know, and I happened to meet my person there. But so I think like that's really what will, even if you're not meeting people, even if there's no match that happens instantly, you're going to be surrounded by people that are like-minded, and that's going to just foster and fuel you to, you know, to keep going, basically.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, and the third point would be, you know, again, going back to that list, is like having the ability to know when to withdraw and when to stop. It's like, having the ability to know this, like, we're not compatible long term. If you're looking for something long term, this isn't going to work out. So, like, despite what you feel or the chemistry maybe, or like, whatever ooey gooey feeling that we might feel inside, is to actually like tell ourselves, okay, I don't think this is working, for my best interest long term. So
Identify the red flags early.
Right. And it's a funny thing. I always tell young people, if you would move across the globe away from everybody and everything for this person, maybe he's the right person. But if you kind of resist it, like, no way, I'm not going there then. Maybe not. But then again, sorry, I'm an oxymoron. Love is not all that you need. You need way more than love, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
But the thing is, but sorry, Nix, but I think that, we're in a world now where our thought process is the instant gratification. We look at social media, everything seems to be perfect. Relationships appear to be perfect. Your mate is perfect. I mean, everything is just perfect.
And we know that surely
it just comes down to a very superficial world right now.
And marriage is hard work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's something I often talk about with my girlfriends, is that, I feel like you're often told, like, the way to know whether to stay or not is that if everything flows, if everything's going great, like that's how you know. And if it's not, then you should ditch the person. That's kind of the echo that you often hear when you're starting to date someone and it's going somewhere. But like, we never talk about, like the fact that they're going to trigger you and you're going to trigger them. And, there's going to be a lot of unpacking of childhood, issues. There's a lot of different things that, are difficult and take time and effort. And that's like, like usually if it's like, oh, if it becomes difficult, that means that's not the right person. That's what you often hear. So I think that's definitely an aspect of things that's not talked about enough, is that the fact that, you will go through your own growth, your own personal growth through the relationship, is that they're supposed to challenge you and make you feel uncomfortable, but, in a way that's for your higher good, for your
positive way. Yes.
But could you tell us a little bit about how you met your fiance? That story sounds interesting.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little crazy, and when I tell the story, people often tell me that I should write a book about it. So I don't know. For me, I got very clear about what I wanted, and I always kind of felt like I wanted something very, kind of, I guess, very what's the term? Epic, where you feel like everything is kind of pushing you together and things are coming. So, being very spiritual and I guess like godly, I really wanted to feel that aspect, within the relationship. And so yeah, it's funny because I actually, I did that. I made a list. I became very clear about what I wanted. I also wrote down all of my fears about relationship and, kind of doing that inner work of letting go of those fears. So, whatever you're carrying and whatever you're harboring within you. And it's funny because I didn't know that, I mean, it was a little crazy, I guess, but at the time I made that wish where I just thought, it doesn't matter whether I'm with them right away, but I just want to meet them. I just want to meet them. So that's what kind of ended up happening, because I was, it wasn't instant, where, I mean, it was just a little crazy because I felt such a crazy pull, and I've always kind of relied on my intuition very heavily, but so I felt like there was something different, but equally my brain was like, I don't know, there's a lot of things that I might be contradictory, but yeah, so it's really just about trusting the process, letting go, not being so obsessed with it as well, and letting things be. But yeah.
Where did you meet him?
Yeah, so I went on this volunteering trip, on this psychology volunteering trip in Sri Lanka. And so yeah, I happened to meet him there, and there was people from all over the globe, from different countries, and yeah, like out of everyone there, it's funny because I had met, a few years before, some of my girlfriends had asked me, like being in London, oh, are you going to stay in London? Do you see yourself ending up with someone that speaks French or someone that speaks English? And so I said, ideally, it would be great to be with someone that has both. But I hadn't met anyone that, had both. So yeah, so when I met him, it just felt like it was kind of almost like obvious, I guess.
Serendipitous.
Yeah, exactly. It was just very strange. And a lot of coincidences, things kept happening. Like the last few days, like his flight got delayed. So we ended up being having to spend the last few days together. And then even after that, because I just thought, okay, this is just someone I met during a volunteering trip. Like I wasn't expecting to see them again because just life happens. We live in 2 different continents.
Where were you were living in Paris at the time or in London?
I was in London at the time, but he was in the US.
In the US.
Yeah.
On the West Coast, correct? In LA?
He was actually in the Midwest.
Okay.
Yeah, at the time, and then he moved to LA. But yeah, so yeah, we didn't talk for a bit, and then we kind of got back in touch. We just couldn't stop talking, I guess. But again, like it was just I wasn't expecting for it to go anywhere. And then,
Now they're engaged.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, congrats.
Crazy, but yeah.
Okay.
But you had put it out there, so.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that really, that was really the main thing, is that you keep hearing stories like this where women made their vision board and made it very clear about who they want and what they want. And they happen to meet someone that fits all of that. So, yeah.
But I think it was also great too. You had your vision, but you also worked on yourself before.
Absolutely.
You talked about your fears and what you knew you had to sort out before getting a relationship, which is awesome.
And I think a lot of people say their biggest fallback is, oh, there's no men out there. The men are all changed. Everything's different, when they haven't really looked at themselves,
right?
So,
and they may not be clear about what they want.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's important.
And if I could add one little thing, is that an important point that I forgot to mention, and that's just, you actually raised that point as well, is that once you make that list, actually make sure that, to look at it and actually ask yourself, how much of that list are you already? Because you can only attract who you are. You can't be on a different, if you believe in love attraction or any of that, is that you have to be in alignment with whatever you want. You can't, there can be such a big gap, like, okay, they're fit and they're taking care of themselves, well, I'm not, or they're intellectual and I'm not really so interested in
very good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And may I also add that if anybody wants any coaching, Nina is your girl. We have a big group of people that we can direct you to the appropriate person, but Nina is very good at
relationships.
Not really relationships, but guiding people to be their best self.
Okay, got you.
Right.
Okay.
And really looking in on themselves to bring out their leadership and the best. She is going for coaching C-suite executives. But thank you, Nina. This has been great. And it's been very insightful. We can't wait to see the pictures of the wedding, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of What the 50. Please show your love and encouragement by sharing, subscribing, and leaving a review wherever you're listening. And
And don't forget to like and follow us on Instagram. And please join our active Facebook group at what.the50.